Do you all feel that residents understand how city decisions are made, right? Most of what I'm seeing right now is we just want this, right? We want this. We want, like right there, what she just shared was a valid. I mean, that's a valid concern, right? You come outside, you see water all over, and and people aren't communicating. That's a valid concern, and I think that all of the things are valid. I just think that, in my opinion, I really don't think people understand. And then the question is, how do we help people better understand in these different pockets of communities, right? Because sometimes we can have this kind of in-group understanding of things and, knowledge and information. But if we're not being able to get it out to the masses in a productive way that's accessible to all, then there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect. So tell me, do you think people understand, and then how can we help people better understand how things kind of go, or where can they go to better understand? Caitlin?
I'll start. My answer to do I think people understand, I think not at all, and I think it's also not their fault. I think government is designed to be difficult, and unless you're really digging in the weeds, it's very hard to understand. I think people don't understand where the city gets its funding from, how much of it comes from the state, how much of the state's funding comes from the feds. When we talk about, if somebody gets CDBG funding and they're like, well, why didn't they put it in my neighborhood? People don't understand that these are only for very specific neighborhoods. We talked about like the library millage, and people are like, you know what, like all this money would be great for the bridges. Like, well, that's a different pot of money, and they're all heavily restricted. And so I think it's incredibly difficult if you're not willing to spend like your entire life trying to figure it out. And again, I think it's one of those things that kind of is all of our responsibility who understand it to share, because we see a ton of disinformation online, a ton of people saying, well, they should just put this to this, and like, why are they getting their potholes filled and I'm not, right? And it's kind of up to those of us who have the knowledge to share the knowledge. I think there can be a little bit of gatekeeping at times. Yeah. And sometimes not intentionally, right? Sometimes we're all just so busy in our own things that we don't think to, explain further, because we're all just surviving every day. And so I think it does fall on all of us. It falls on us to, of course, do our own research, but then again, it falls on those of us who understand to share the knowledge, because, like Carrie and I, we were all taught from somebody, right? Very, very rarely do we figure it out on our own.
We do not come out of the womb with the knowledge.
Yes, we do not. Yeah, I think there's a ton of misinformation, especially around road funding, where that comes from, how it can be used, what types of streets it can be used for, if it can be used for sidewalks. There's a ton of misinformation out there, but it's also very hard to access the true information.
And I think that even with Bay City governments, like even their online presence, I think that there could be more did you know type of information that comes out on a week. I don't know who runs there, so I have no idea who runs the social media, but I've looked at it, and I think that there could be some work done there in regards of random information, especially when people are saying the same thing over and over again. We want information about this one. Give them some information, right? You don't have to give them all the ins and outs, but I think that it is important to listen to the people, listen, right? They're saying we want to know more about this, and there's a way to kind of do it almost like a trivia, right? Where you're giving just a little bit. And I understand the idea, because I know we talk about that a lot, that government is very complicated. It is, right? But it's some things that, go to this link and you can complain about your street, right? There's some very small, easy things that I think that we can share with people to help people feel a little bit more connected to the problem-solving part of things, right? And so it's just a matter of kind of brainstorming on how to implement a little bit more of the feeding some more information to people, right? So does anybody else want to add anything? Thank you, Caitlin.
I think I've talked with a couple people about this after the last session. Bay City takes a lot of heat. The commission takes a lot of heat for what happens in the city. I'm a Bay County resident. Try to attend the Bay County Commission meetings. I applaud the city for having their meetings at an accessible time for people. The county meetings are at 4 o'clock.
On a Tuesday.
on a Tuesday. Sometimes they're only 20 minutes long, which seems a bit frustrating. And I think there are some entities that kind of like to stay silent because that way they aren't getting the criticism. And it for them that works and they're able to go about their stuff. But growing up in a smaller town and being in a county seat, which is what Bay City is, you know, I would love for county commissioners to be here. I, you know, would love to see them giving input on this and how they're supporting the city.
We did invite them.
You did invite them?
Yes.
She said she did invite them, just so everyone's clear. But I would love to see them here because this is part of it. What are they also doing? Like, what are they doing to help Bay City? The county has a stronger voice at the state level than the city does. You know, the city is more agile. They're able to do things more quickly and apply for stuff and all of that. But sometimes when it comes to the bigger problems, you need more voices, not just the residents, but people who do have the power to make a difference to say, okay, this isn't all right. You know, I've been researching the bridges and trying to understand it. Currently, I'm like back to 1970. It goes even further than that, but that was before I was born. I'm not willing to go back any further. But just looking at the way that infrastructure has been handled, and currently this is just the result of decisions that have been made. I'm using this phrase, it's like a layer cake. The big one you get at Uno's, that's like chocolate and yummy. But the city is just like the whipped cream and the cherry on top. They had to do something now to fix a problem that had been 50 years in the making. You know, and there are other entities that could have come in and helped with it. And I think everyone needs to strive to be transparent. I think that's really the only way that citizens are going to feel heard and seen. I think that there are entities that are trying, and there are those that aren't. And it's harder to yell at them. It's harder to get a hold of them. It's harder to have access to them, and I think sometimes it's designed that way. So I would encourage them to also reach out to those entities and be like, hey, you are all here with your time, a resource that is not renewable. Why aren't they? Are they listening to what you're saying? Are you contacting them as much as you contact your city commissioner? Because there's a lot of people who are responsible for the situation that Bay City is in. It's not just necessarily the people in this room or this building.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there is a niche group of folks in Bay City who are politically engaged enough to understand the processes about funding, like what you two were just talking about, but I don't think that that information is necessarily known by the layperson, by the average citizen in Bay City. And I think that that's definitely a barrier because, you know, like you both mentioned as well, like that leads to discourse, especially online, where people don't really understand why something happens or maybe the specific parameters around it. And I think that if we want to be able to meet people where they're at, you know, maybe they don't have the capacity, maybe it's psychologically, mentally, the mental load, maybe they're working late, maybe they have kids, maybe they can't come out to a city meeting, and maybe they just don't have the capacity to kind of sit and understand all of that technical knowledge about the rules and regulations and everything. And I feel like if we want to meet people where we're at, then maybe that means physically meeting them where they're at, and whether that's the commissioners or it's city staff, whoever it is, going out into these parts of the community and having those conversations in community settings, local coffee shops. I mean, we're blessed in Bay City to have a lot of coffee shops for being the size that we are. And I'm a coffee drinker, so I go to all of them. But I mean, like, to Live Oak, Legacy, Harless and Hugh, Lolo Bees, going to these places and other places within the community as well that are frequented by, you know, folks who may go to those places but don't come to city meetings, and maybe having kind of like an open coffee hour or an open discussion hour there so that we can kind of reach people who are not used to coming here. We go to them.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd also like to see the city educate. You know, not everybody's on Facebook, I understand that, but a lot of people in the city are on Facebook. Why can't the city have either a social media intern or somebody who controls all the separate Facebook pages, so when there's a power outage on Saturday at 5 o'clock, the intern can log on to Facebook and say, hey, there's a power outage, the 26th Street substation's out, we're gonna do this and that, and it's on its way. Or even educate the city with what is a tax capture district? What does that mean to the people who live in this area? Or what is a TIFA zone? Because there are still people in the city who think we could have had the loons and that we missed out on a casino. And that was never even in play, but yet we're so angry that this didn't happen, and they're frustrated and they're upset. And it would be so simple to, here's an infographic, here's exactly what a tax capture district does, here's what it means to the people who live in it, and oh, hey, look, now we know what this means, now we're not so upset about it.
Yeah.
Very
And,
easy.
and I think that has been the main thing is communication, right? What does healthy communication look like? And why aren't we, I'm saying that collectively, why aren't we maybe open to having those type of communication sometimes, right? Some of this is very simple, right? You let people know about certain things and it's like, oh, I didn't know about that, or I can just do this, or I can go to this person. And we have some commissioners in the room tonight. I really want to ask, if you guys don't mind, putting you on the spot, the commissioners. But if one of you all or both, I think I see two in here, are willing to.
Three.
Oh, we have three. Oh, hi. I see. I'm
Alex is
sorry.
back there.
If one of you all are willing to come up, or like all three, but. Is there anything that you all have found that people think that you are responsible for, that it is not your area, and then maybe you could kind of say, well, who might be the person that's, am I making sense?
Say it one more time.
So you all are kind of held accountable for a lot of things. Like, why can't the commission just do this? Why can't the commission do this? Are there things that you've seen that people have kind of implied or thought or accused you of not doing, but you actually don't have the power alone to do it?
I always want to come up to anything saying, how can I help?
Sure.
There's a ton that I don't know. I learn new things every day. Just because I got appointed didn't mean that I get all this knowledge based off of osmosis. I had to look it all up, learn it. I'm learning all this stuff too. So everything is public information. So I have to go find it, or specifically ask someone, or invite myself to the table. I'm in this position of privilege because people answer my questions more often when I ask, which is great, and I try and use that power for good. But every single day somebody comes to me with a problem, and I've never heard of this before, and I'm like, I don't know, but let's try and figure it out. So I do what I can with the knowledge that I have to try and get an answer or a resolution to the best of my ability. And I have a day job too. I'm not perfect. I've dropped balls, but we have a staff of 300 people, and we have good people here too. So even if there's not a city answer, still trying to listen, be empathetic, problem solve, try and just give dignity and respect everywhere. I think that goes a long way. But absolutely, there's all kinds of things where I don't know the answer, but I'm going to try and do something about it.
Or even that you don't even have the control, you don't have control over. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, okay, yes, come. Anybody can come. Thank you, Laura.
I'm sorry, the bridges can't be free. But
There you go.
we can hold, the Bay City Bridge partners accountable for the contracts that exist, and try and answer some of these unanswered questions about the annual pass and all this other stuff. Sure. But I'll pass the mic.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate that.
I'm fearful
Craig.
because I asked Craig to come up with solutions with not city problems. I don't know.
A lot of people don't understand. Bangor is not Bay City. Bay City is not Bangor. There's mass confusion on that. We can solve Bangor problems. Bangor can't solve Bay City problems. We can work together, but like the library, that was not Bay City. That was Bangor, but yet we were getting blamed for it. Even the vote last night in Bangor, I'm hearing, why is Bay City not doing this with this housing and stuff like that? That's not Bay City. People have a confusion on that. A city commissioner cannot direct city staff. We have to go through the city manager. The city manager will then direct that. So when you have a problem or an issue, we have to go through a process of getting it taken care of, which I try to do all the time. Anything from drains to tree branches or crack in the sidewalk. We can do the best we can with that. Money, manpower, and time. That's our limitations. Besides that, it's, everything's out there, but not everybody is on social media either. Just a couple years ago when I was knocking on doors, I would give people my Facebook page. I don't do that. I don't have email. I don't do that. Coffee shops and meetings are great ideas. I'd love that. But door to door is the best way to find out what people are interested in, what they want to do, if they answer the door. But it's just getting out there and being approachable, answering the phone, and trying to take care of any situation you can.
So, Alex DeWitt, I'm the 6th Ward Commissioner, current Commissioner President. I've been coming to meetings since 2017. I just got elected in 2024 for 2025. So I've had a lot of time beforehand to learn things. But the first thing I ask when people send me questions is, what is your actual address? Because again, what Mr. Coakley said is that a lot of people who live outside the city think they are part of the city and vice versa. With the bridges, the one I get is, why can't we just steal the bridges? I don't want the feds in here to take all of our funding. Speaking of funding, as an accountant by trade, every year I send over 100 questions to our finance director and I publish them because people have questions and accounting is not an easy field to just pick up and go. So for this year, our total city budget all in for everything is about $210 million. Does anyone on the panel want to take a guess how much is property taxes on that?
Oh, it's a small percent. Oh my, I don't have it off the top of my head. It's much smaller than people.
12.5 million only. The rest is all other stuff from grants from the other entities above us, and because we have power, about $45 million is power. So when people say, well, why can't you just spend my tax money on this? Most of your tax money is used directly, immediately on things that can't be covered by other funding. So your police, your parks, keeping this building open. That's where most of that money goes. Almost none of the money from your current tax bill goes towards streets. The county-wide road millage, when we have one, goes to the County Road Commission that can't work on city streets. So when those are active, the city subsidizes the county does not reciprocate. So when things like that happen, and we talked about, I mentioned the possible road millage, when we did the survey last year, the only amount that was acceptable to over 50% of people who submitted the survey, which obviously skewed toward involved people, was $50 a person. That's $1.6 million a year in Bay City. To get the roads fixed before I would not be able to, before I'd be termed out, we would need about $450 million a year. It's just not feasible right now. Like, I understand our roads are bad, and it's really bad when you come down on the south end, when you're coming into town off of Lincoln, where you have half in the city, half not. And 10 years ago, after the road was collapsing, the city said, I'm going to play a card here, and I'm going to pave my side, because Portsmouth wasn't answering their calls. And then when we get to the bridges, the townships say, well, that's a city problem. The council leadership, that's a city problem, that's not a township problem. And as soon as that happened, and the commission at the time flipped and said, we're going to lease the bridges, they all said, well, why aren't I involved? Why wasn't I involved? It's like, I was in these meetings. I know they were here. Whether or not they were actually in the discussions, I was not available for that because I wasn't on the chair at that time. But just the amount of people who are told things and then are not listening to us also. So, like, I've been guilty of that, and that's why I went the way I did. I came to the meetings, I learned, and I got some of the bad things out of my brain from preconceived notions. And as I go online and I respond to things, and it's the same questions over and over and over, like, hey, downtown fixes their streets every 10 to 15 years. Why is that? Well, they pay an extra tax of 7 to 10 points on each building. Do you want to pay 7 to 10 extra points on your building? Because I guarantee you, if we put that out to the city, that would be voted down by 95%. But that district agrees to pay that. So there's disconnects in how people understand that, and that's just something that, like all the other things I mentioned, people aren't understanding. And when they do ask us, a lot of them take it and then ask the same question 3 months later because they don't like that answer, which I understand because it's not solving the problem, or they just move on to something else. And I'm okay to answer questions, but please, if I have something and I can give you data, please listen to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, I have a question for you. So you did mention at the end, so because before you were a commissioner, you had thoughts, right, about how things operated. Now that you've been a commissioner for the last year and a half, what really has changed in your thought process about what, before you got to be a commissioner, now you are a commissioner?
Instead of me just seeing us hitting walls, I'm hitting the same walls and I'm trying to break them. So, like, it's just a matter of trying to change processes and fixing siloing from 50 years of processes. And it's a slow process because if government moved fast, I don't know what it would look like, but currently it moves slow.
democracy. Yes, at work. But so yes, the one thing I do see, I hear a lot about the lack of transparency. And the question is, where does that, because there's so much information that's available, you got to go out there and find it, and things are posted on a regular basis. It's like sometimes I respond to things online, and then the next person has the same question, and so you try to answer that one, and it's very difficult on an individual basis to keep going one by one by one, and I try my best, and I know some of these other commissioners try their best, but a lot of it keeps getting addressed, and it's how do we engage at a level where you can broadly inform people? We have our twice a month meetings, and we connect with people, and everybody has their opportunity to come and talk. And I know some people would like to talk more than just the 5 minutes, and we grant them an extra 2, and sometimes that's not enough. And but
I think I think what some people shared before was, he can still talk if he has more.
The mayor can't have the mic.
Well, I'm just trying to address the one part that you said, because the commission meetings, people, you can't engage there, right? So people can say all kind of stuff, right? They can spout off and say Santa is coming in a couple months, but so I think the part that from what I'm getting in regards to people and what they're saying is that the engagement, right? Being able to get things answered. And I know you do answer a lot online and give a lot of information there. And I know we keep saying the information is out there, but some way people didn't know there was a line, right, to call for your vote. So I guess instead of us in leadership saying the information is out there, the question is how can we get it to.
And that's the question that I want to have, is how do we come up with those solutions? Because tonight was supposed to be about solutions, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we change that level of engagement to find these solutions to reach those? Because we used to rely on the Bay City Times. And everybody had the Bay City Times, and they had that article, and they knew it, right? Because I've been researching, going back in history, because I have been doing this a long time. And I see some of these same kind of comments, and they have been addressed. And so how do we, not having that kind of outlet anymore, everybody's getting information from different sources. So I think we need to kind of get that feedback from folks. I do believe you can do that one-on-one in the coffee house, but you don't have enough time in the world to address all that, and it's very difficult. And so people are taking to social media, but I think we have to, as a community, figure out what is that outlet to make those connections, because there is a lot of kind of misinformation out there. Uptown is a big misinformation on, there's a belief that there's all these large tax cuts that were given to that program, and they pay a lot of taxes that's going to ultimately benefit the community. So I guess the biggest thing on me is figuring out that level of engagement so people feel heard, because I try in my whole career in public service is how do I listen to folks and how do I take action. And you can really pull up, if you go back in history, and you can pull up the things I've heard and the action I've taken. So, but people forget that. And so how do you?
Chris, you're doing a good job. You are doing a good job. I think the thing is, we can't reach everybody by social media. We can't go door to door. But I also think that there are ways for us to utilize, even though everybody's not on social media, there are ways to have, a did you know is so helpful, right? It's very simple, it's very easy, and if you see these continued, in my opinion, now of course I don't do it, so whoever would do it could do it, but I know, if someone is saying over and over again, we want to know more about this, then just give them some of that information, maybe did you know, and then you kind of answer that, right? And so I don't know, and so
I don't know, because a lot of times, because unfortunately we do not have city staff here, because a lot of times I think the same things it's missing, and then they go, oh, did you know? And it was there. And so there is sometimes a disconnect. I do wish we had more city staff here to talk about it.
Well, we have residents here, and we also have leaders here in the room, and we have leaders who are residents. And so, do you all have any suggestions on better ways to connect? I have some that I had down here in my paper, but I would love to hear from you all. You guys are here, and I would imagine you guys came here to talk. So I'm listening.
While everyone's moving up, can
Yes.
I just share?
Yes.
I think the commissioners often get a bad rap, like they're not doing enough, but I have to tell you guys, a lot is happening that everybody doesn't see. And so, like, Alex is the king of transparency, right? If you want to know what's going on, you go to his page and you see it. Last summer, I texted Craig at 9 p.m. because my friend's neighbor's tree was tagged for removal, and they liked that tree and it wasn't unhealthy. So Craig and Heidi walked down and we're somehow able to save this tree. And last week, Chris got a voicemail from an 80-year-old woman who broke her back. Medicaid wasn't covering it. And within an hour had her connected to a caseworker. And so I think people are going above and beyond, and that's also not being recognized as enough, as everyone's kind of beating their heads against the wall on things they can't control.
And I think too, like, I know there's a lot of conversation about the same answer repeated over and over. Government is hard to wrap your brain around. And when you start delving into it, it's almost like you're, you know, in a movie, in the Matrix, trying to understand how all this stuff works and the layers and the departments and who's here. And, you know, my family, we've opened businesses across the state, and trust me, one of the last places I want to deal with when I'm investing in something is the state of Michigan, because it just gets really complicated. The nerdy answers aren't sexy. There's no magic wand like, oh, we can just fix a pothole. Like, oh, why can't I just go out and fix a pothole? Well, because there's a grade to the road, and it's engineered, and there's a design, and trust me, my husband hates my answers when he starts asking why stuff is the way it is. But I think that's part of it, and I think there's just this mystification of how things are processed or done. I've written a lot of grants. I know there are a lot of nonprofits in the room that get grants too, and someone will say, well, that program's really great, but why couldn't we get this? Well, because that grant was available. Sometimes it's just where the funding is, and that's where you can fix it. Whoever is above decides, okay, today we want to focus on side streets. Okay, this year you're going to get grants for side streets. The money may not be there the next year. It's very hard to kind of plan, and answers aren't as simple as just like, oh, we're going to buy the bridges back. With what? You know?
Well, and that's the thing is sometimes, you know, there's this conversation about, well, let's just do this. And they say, okay, we'll have a millage that goes up for that, right? And then that'll help pay for that. Or we don't want to pay a millage. We don't want this to go up, right? So then it's this, what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg. Somebody has to pay. Everything costs money, right? Everything costs money. And so that is part of the conversation as well. And Caitlin, thank you for saying that. I mean, you know, and I don't want this to feel like this is nobody's doing anything. I also think that it is fair to say that people don't know that things are happening, right? And of course things are happening, and I'm glad that they are. And thank you for sharing that, because it, you know, actually sheds a little bit of light of things that are going on behind the scenes. But for the average person, you know, you're kind of in the know, right? You're in the know of things, so you know. And so, how do we better communicate with people in you know, in the community?
Matt.
Go ahead. Sorry. Thank you.
All right. She's like, all right, come up and tell us. And I'm like, okay, I will. And, so everybody, I'm Matt Seuss. I'm another one of the 5th Ward commissioners, or candidates. We've got a third here, too. We're everywhere. Half the ward is running. But so I think something that I think could be useful for communicating is just packaging a lot of the really useful information the city provides already in a way that's more accessible. Something that, I mean, when you asked that question, something I was thinking about is like, 2-3 meetings ago, the city commission had a really informative presentation on the roads, right? Just explaining how we got where we are, what the funding challenges, you know, and just was very informative on the roads. And I know for a fact for myself, I'm going to be going back to that YouTube video of that meeting to watch that presentation again, just so I can refresh my memory on a lot of that information. However, you know, I've got to figure out which meeting it was at, and I got to, well, you know, I feel like something just very simple when we have a presentation like that at a meeting, cut that snippet out, make that its own YouTube channel, on the, you know, or its own video on the YouTube. Share that video. Hey, community, here's a recent public presentation on the state of Bay City's roads, you know. And I think, and I know for a fact, just watching other city commission meetings, that there are other very informative presentations that occur. And that's something that can be cut and shared, you know, on our social media and that type of stuff. So I think that's, video's good, but also a lot of the other very informative stuff that the city produces but doesn't really blast out there or cut in a nice way. Well,
Like what?
well, for instance, See, Click, Fix, I feel like should be advertised more or be more front and center. I know it's somewhere on the city website, but it's, you got to go find it. I feel like every spring, the city's Facebook page should be saying, hey, community, did you know we have an app for reporting the potholes? And maybe we already do that. But it's like,
That's what I tend to find. The city is doing a lot of this stuff, and I don't know if there's so much that we don't pay attention to, or we don't, because I get frustrated too sometimes because, oh, where's this? And then I go and look, and it actually was right there. And so I don't know. I mean, I agree it's a valid,
so that one we already do. Well, do we cut up our city commission meetings in a way that?
and clip it. I don't know if you clip that.
Until last year, when we changed the rules, they weren't even kept on the site.
Okay.
So we made a change.
So we're moving in the right direction.
It just takes a long time to get things to where we can approve it and then find someone who has the time/money because we have to pay.
And that's the challenge. And so it's like, do we want people, how do we want to allocate the funding, that kind of stuff. But it seems like it's a recurring issue. People want to know where to find this stuff or want to learn it, and so it might be worth the time.
Yeah,
So-
I think some of it comes down to like the search terms too, and it's certainly not unique to the city or anywhere. Like we're working with 211, the resource navigator right now, because I can't even find my own resources on here because they're using taxonomy terms that aren't human language, right? So if people are searching, car repair, and they just have me in there as automotive, blah, 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 and it doesn't search using common language. And the city falls into the same thing, right? Sometimes you're searching it, and if you don't have the name exactly right, you just can't find it. And it's certainly a systems issue across every sector.
Well, and I think that's another thing too, and it's something, when I was on this thing last time, something that I think that I've found very useful when I'm trying to learn something now is I use an AI tool. I ask that question, maybe to get me started, and not necessarily trust it, but get me started. And having that type of information that we provide, so it'd be more accessible to searching, to like what you're talking about, to for those types of tools to be able to find that information and pull it, I think is definitely the future.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner DeWitt said something, and I'm a Bangor resident, so I realize I'm not a Bay City resident. It's just a couple of blocks. I can throw a stone and hit Handy Middle School. I think there's a lot of, I am a Bay City person. I love downtown. I love the city. We've invested. I've worked on nonprofits and really put time into wanting this area to be great for my kid and their kids. And I do think there's a lot of silos. I think the townships and the county and everyone's just worried about their own little fiefdom. And Bay City just gets the heat from
typical
Bay City.
everywhere, right?
It
Yeah.
is, but I think it's for us residents to hold them accountable. Am I absolutely pissed that the county didn't do anything about the bridges and now I have to pay $2 per time every time I go across? Yeah. Have they heard from me? Absolutely. Because it affects so many, but because it was Bay City's decision, they're the ones taking all the heat. But there were so many other people that could have come to the table and had those conversations, and I'm glad that it's finally being discussed. Like, they were invited, they were here, they just kind of passed the buck. I think it's really important that the city doesn't get all of the heat for it, and I know we're focused on solutions, and some of it is reaching up and going, hey, what the hell did you guys do? What was going on? Did you not think about everyone who crosses the bridge? My son used to go to daycare at the Y. We live on the west side. Getting stuck on the bridge, it just happened to me a couple weeks ago. There was an accident on both sides, on the bridge for 45 minutes. Like, come on, what if I'm going to the Y to pick up my kid and they close at 6:30 and I can't get them? I'm having a panic attack on the bridge. Did anyone think about how this was going to affect residents outside of that area? I joke with my husband, like, I'm gonna buy some property in Bay City so I can go to the commission meetings and be a Bay, have some interest in Bay City. Like, we gotta move, sorry, babe. But I think there are people outside of the city, like, we're all invested in this area. When you talk about Bay City, you think about this area, you think about what we have. And I think, sometimes people are not in my backyard or it's not my problem and things like that. But I think as a region, And just speaking of like the townships outside of Bay City, we have to start thinking of ourselves collectively and not always just say, well, they're not a Bay City resident, so they really can't have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to, you know, pay for, you know, the bridges and stuff like that. Like, you can now see how it's directly impacting people outside of the community.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating. Like, there are people who are deeply invested and want to solve problems. It's just we have to kind of shake other trees
Yeah.
to get people to hear us and realize that we're also invested in that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.